Well, thank you for joining, everyone. My name is Erica, and today with me is Stephen Morgan from CoverWell. Stephen will be talking about cultivating a reliability-focused culture in an early-stage startup. Before Stephen takes over, I just wanted to take a quick minute to remind everyone to register for SLOconf. SLOconf is happening May 15th till 18th, and SLOconf is a global virtual event concentrated on SLOs. We have over 60 industry experts and speakers joining this conference to talk about reliability, SLOs, and everything that covers this area. It's totally free to attend. You can attend while you work because everything is online, and there's like not really a schedule. You can just attend whenever you have time, and then you can watch videos later. So please make sure to share this conference with your colleagues, friends, or anyone that's interested in SLOs.
So, Stephen Morgan, yes. I kind of usually explain my name as Stephen, not Stefan. Steph Curry has kind of put a damper on that. I did realize to Urza's point earlier when she was speaking, when I was in the Middle East overseas, it's more common to pronounce my name, with kind of more of the traditional F sound than with the V sound. So that's, I don't hold it against anybody. But yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about cultivating a reliability focused culture in an early stage startup. So let's get this, I guess we'll get this party started. So you'll kind of break this up into about 4 parts, right? Kind of a little bit of an introduction where I early on try to convince you that I might know what I'm talking about. We'll see if it works. Then we'll kind of go into the next phase and kind of define some terms and context around reliability, startups, and culture. And then, discuss some anti-patterns and common pitfalls that I traditionally see or have seen around the startup space. That kind of extends into enterprise environments as well. It just kind of compounds over time, basically, but kind of when we're in the the early stages of the company, some high level patterns that could be addressed, and at the end I'll kind of discuss like what we've done here at CoverWell in the last couple months to kind of address these issues and start cultivating that reliability culture early on, right? So, who am I? Stephen Morgan. I currently live in Raleigh, North Carolina. My partner, Renee, is a physics PhD student here. We have 2 kids, Charlie and Max, 2 dogs, Ginger and Cece. What do I do at CoverWhale? This is kind of a giant blurb, but in the grand scheme of things, I do the DevOps stuff. All right, like that's kind of my bucket. We'll save the kind of lecture about whether DevOps is a role or a philosophy for another day, but you get the point. The things that kind of traditionally fall into those kinds of roles is what I'm responsible for. Where do I come from? I've worked for a couple other startups recently. Machinify, it's an AI and machine learning company focused on healthcare out in the Bay Area. I've worked for e-commerce startup, Jet.com. It was based out of Hoboken, later purchased by Walmart. Spent a couple years at Walmart as well. And did a lot of my earlier career working in defense contracting in Southeast Virginia, where I grew up. Most notably, Lockheed Martin is a company that people are largely familiar with. So we've got the first act here. We'll kind of cover some terms that to give us a bit of a level setting situation, right? So reliability, I pulled this definition out of designing data intensive applications. We as a group of engineers where I work are currently reading as a book club. So the system should continue to work correctly, performing the correct function at the desired level of performance, even in the face of adversity. hardware, software faults, and even human error. What I like about this definition is it's very high level, and discusses the human aspect of how we can impact reliability, right? It's not super, low level, it's very easy to kind of digest, right? So let's talk about early stage startup. I did reference Silicon Valley Bank, RIP, with the situation going on with them. Kind of unfortunate to kind of overlap here, but they do define an early stage startup as one that covers the time before securing your first Series A funding. There's several other terms that are used. You can see there on the screen, but hopefully that kind of understands. If you're not familiar with startups, right, you kind of do have like your seed stage and your initial, like, hey, I have an idea and somebody gave me money to kind of see where that idea goes, and etc. And then once you kind of establish yourself and look promising, right, you can go back and secure other funding, and those are Series A, Series B, and so forth and so on. Just kind of a little bit if you're not familiar with startups. And then kind of startup culture. I gravitate a lot to this, having grown up, if you will, in the enterprise environments. I've really taken to enjoying being in startups and working with startups. Employees tend to kind of balance breadth and depth regarding their workload. You don't always get to focus your as much as you may want to solve a problem. You may have to kind of relinquish a bit and get something done that meets, kind of the bare minimum, and you move on to the next thing because you're just trying to get through, right? Like what's necessary. Things move fast, and you're traditionally kind of like the term I always use, right, is survival, right? You're trying to survive with the company. Keep the company moving forward, doing what you can there to create value that's high impact and high ROI, return on investment, right? I saw this the other day on LinkedIn. Tracy Chu, CEO of Block Party, made a post. I snipped this quote from that post because I thought it perfectly explains exactly what it's like being an engineer in a startup, right? A good engineer is good at trade-offs, identifying them, articulating them, and making them. In a startup, though, the added difficulty is knowing the right time frame over which to make those trade-offs, right? As it can vary and fluctuate tremendously, right? You may have a new feature that needs to go out that may impact how or if you can secure funding to keep going and extend what's called your runway for the next year or whatever the case may be, right? So you may see something that needs to get done, but you've got to deviate away from that and focus on something that may be more impactful in the shorter term. So moving on to our second act here, we're going to kind of discuss some of the common pitfalls that we see, right, in working in these environments. We have a tendency to kind of we hire incredibly smart people, and they're very good at what they do. They solve very big problems, incredibly tough problems, right? But sometimes those solutions may overextend a bit, and kind of give not the maximum amount of return on investment. So just kind of complexity, right? Probably keep it simple, silly, stupid, whatever you want to use there. It's kind of a normal acronym. MVP, treat everything, well, because of the complexity and over engineering, people should treat things more like an MVP, kind of solving or attempting to solve the problem early on with a bare minimum. right? Allowing you to focus on other things as they arise, and being able to kind of shift your attention as things ebb and flow within the environment, within and the company itself. Um, you know, we want to kind of like focus on sticking with the fundamentals as much as possible, build that base, right, and kind of establish the groundwork as much as we can, right? And when you're focusing on kind of like creating and solving problems at the bare minimum, it kind of gives you some wiggle room to really focus on incorporating the fundamental things that help, create the building blocks and foundation of other things to work off of, right? And, due to complexity, right, we have a tendency to create a bit of tech debt early on. Maybe we're ignoring some things so that we can focus on a more narrow scope of solving a problem at the best of our possible abilities. And that's a bit of a trade-off, right? When we do that, we know that, with the company size being traditionally what it is, we may be losing out on time to kind of approach, some other things, right? So, um, besides complexity, we have a tendency to kind of create a scenario of lack of information, right? We may lose out on documentation. We may not include tests in our pipeline maybe not at all, right? Or we may have tests, but they don't meet exactly what we need for the business use case. Maybe we're lacking metrics. Traditional standard metrics and logs may not be rolling up, may never leave the server, whatever the case may be. um, you know, and then we move on to, kind of traditionally like a lack of trust. Again, kind of talking about incredibly smart people working in silos, very focused on a thing, or being working as kind of like a black box, right? If I've mentioned here, if you've read the Phoenix Project, you're familiar with Brent and the whole thing, with him kind of being like the de facto knows everything guy, and how much that impeded upon things getting done, because everybody kind of had to find him to get like the information out, the context or whatever the case, right? And then lack of collaboration, right? Kind of building off of silos and black boxes, talking about not communicating with other teams, not understanding the social contracts between engineering teams or product teams or whatever they may be. Kind of creates a divide and could create tech debt later on. Slow down in your growth as a company, right? And so, kind of talking about over the past couple months with Cover Whale, one of the biggest things that we did to kind of approach the culmination of all those things there that we talked about, addressing complexity, lack of documentation, better insight into what's going on, how things break. We created a good incident management process, right? It was brought up early on. I had experience with it, and I started, spitballing ideas with my engineering lead team, and it was interesting, right? Because when we first started talking about this, it was kind of like, oh man, like is this something that is going to be impactful at this stage at where we're at? And I think I reached out to Zach Nickens that's on the call with us now, and I was like, hey man, who are your favorites? I've used a couple incident management companies. He gave me some other names. We reached out, demoed some stuff, and man, it was great. Within our demo period of one of our products that we were using, we immediately saw a reduction in complexity as far as how we could establish what happened, how it was triaged, getting information out of engineers that hadn't had time to document stuff in the past, giving a centralized location for everybody to communicate, right? And that centralized location being Slack, where kind of everybody's at. Our incident process, starts and stops in Slack, right? So the tooling that we use integrates with Slack and Jira and Confluence and all the other things that we're already using. It makes the entire process super easy, right? So now we've reduced complexity, and what maybe before was kind of like, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just going to go bounce the service or reboot the server, and move on with my life. It gave us an easy way to establish a common ground, a common forum, get cross team collaboration, documentation, etc., all in kind of like one place, easy to initiate, super low overhead, and that has paid dividends. We've seen a handful of incidents occur that were kind of like were things that just existed for who knows how long, right? We had people come in, different team members, across either the platform or some of the other initiatives that we have going on, start looking at it, working together, asking questions. The questions were documented in the channel, right? They get archived, they export to something we can use for incident analysis, etc. It's been great. We've seen kind of a massive hit with that. So so how does it impact culture, right? So from the technology, obviously, what it allows us to do is kind of get into the mindset earlier, right? Like if I'm completely siloed off and I have no idea what happens once my code or whatever goes into production, and I'm not faced with that reality, then I'm just going to continue doing things that I know how to do and the way that I've been doing them, etc. Having that exposure, that collaboration, that discussion in a way that is cordial and engaging and easy, allows us to kind of be like, oh crap, like maybe I should not do that thing, or I should rethink how create that method or function or refactor whatever I need to refactor. So now we're putting the idea of reliability and the fact that we aren't perfect and we are human back into the earlier parts of the software development lifecycle. Therefore, kind of creating some reliability early on and being able to build on those building blocks, as well as being able to address processes, right? So not only is it the technology that we get to think about, but some of the gaps in processes that we see. If you remember, a couple of years ago, the mass email that went out, I think it was just a blank email from HBO, and kind of in the Twitter circles, there was a running joke whenever this happened that it was the intern, right? Like, that's not the fault of the intern; it's the fault of a bad process, right? And those are incidents or opportunities where we can kind of discover those and be like, okay, like obviously somebody's capable of doing this with the current boundaries that are set or not set, and we should address that issue so that we reduce any sort of future impact, right? So and then so that kind of helps us drive both technology and internal process culture, right? So so I think that's about time. Try to keep it as in scope for time frame as I could. Anyway, so thank you for listening to me ramble on about startups. I appreciate it, and how we can incorporate reliability early. So